Hi, my name is Mason, and today we're going to be talking about strokes. So, according to the CDC, 795,000 people suffer from a stroke every year here in America. Of those same 795,000 people, 610,000 of those are first occurrences, and 140,000 patients die. So, you're probably wondering, why is this guy so passionate about strokes? Well, for the last 2 years, I've been working as an EMT. And while I've been to countless strokes, and that's not surprising given the data I just presented, what is surprising is the amount of times that I've been to their homes or to a business, and the person who called 911 has no idea that the patient was having a stroke. They just thought that they were acting weird. So today I want to talk about what a stroke is, how we can identify it, and what to do when you do identify a stroke. So I'm sure most of you have heard the term stroke before. A stroke refers to any sort of inhibition of blood flow to the brain, the most common being an ischemic stroke, and this is usually caused by some form of clot that's made its way into the brain and is stopping blood flow. So, why is this so important that we recognize it early? According to the American Heart Association, 1.9 million neurons die every minute that a stroke is occurring. So as you can see, it's extremely important that we recognize it early. But how do we do that? Well, today I'm going to be talking about be fast and how we do that. So with all of these signs and symptoms that I'm going to be talking about, it's really important that you keep in mind progression. While you might not see some of these signs early, you might see them later, or if you're seeing one now, it might get worse as the stroke progresses. So with that in mind, let's get to it. B stands for balance. Now this can be any sort of loss of balance. You can walk with the patient. I'd recommend not doing that because if they do have a loss of balance, you don't want them to fall and hurt themselves. But B, balance, it's any sort of loss of balance. E stands for eyes. This is going to be any sort of loss of vision between the two eyes or a double vision. Now, one thing you can do is you can ask the patient to cover one eye, cover the other eye, and if there's any sort of discrepancy between the two eyes that the patient doesn't normally have, that would be a positive finding. We're going to want to keep that in mind. So F, A, and S, these are all commands, so it's important to keep in mind the patient's mentation. If we ask them to do one of these things and they aren't able to follow the command, that's going to be another positive finding that we're going to want to keep in mind. So F stands for face. What we're going to do is we're going to ask the patient to smile really big. Now what we're looking for is any sort of drooping in the eyebrows or in the face itself. Oftentimes, like I mentioned, you can say, "Sir or ma'am, smile really big for me," and they'll go, "Yes," and they won't be able to follow the command. So A stands for arms. This is going to be any sort of arm droop. So what I like to do is I like to grab the patient by the hands. I like to hold their hands. I ask them to close their eyes, and then I let go. And what we're looking for is any drooping. If you find that, that's a positive finding. There's a good probability that they're having a stroke. Another thing that I like to do is I like to grab the patient by the hands, and I like to say, "Sir, ma'am, please squeeze my hands." What you're looking for is diminished grip strength between the two. Speech, what we're looking for is slurring, and again, this one's really big with that mentation I was talking about earlier. So what I like to do is any sort of like funny, like tongue twister kind of. So what I like to do is "the skies are blue in Seattle." What this is doing is we're looking for that slurring of speech. And then the next most important piece is the time. You want to make sure that you're asking whoever called, or maybe a healthy person who is on the scene, when did this occur? Maybe you're at the bank and the bank teller is the one that noticed. You say, like, "Well, when did it start?" They'll say, "Oh, 5 minutes ago." So that's an important thing we want to keep in mind. So for the next piece, now that we've identified that the person might be having a stroke, we're going to talk about what to do next. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull out your phone, and then you're going to pull out some form of piece of paper, because what I want you to do is take a deep breath, let it out, collect yourself, and then what you're going to do is you're going to collect this next piece of information. I would recommend writing it down. That way, when you get on the phone, your adrenaline's running, you don't forget it. So you're going to call 911, and the dispatcher is going to ask you the nature of the emergency. I believe this patient's having a stroke. The location. You can make sure that you wrote down the address earlier. The patient's conditioning. Any of these positive findings we found. Oh, he has slurred speech and arm drift. And then a good callback number, preferably yours. If your cell phone's about to die, you can make sure, see if there's anyone around who has a good callback number for you. So in conclusion today, we talked about what a stroke is, how to identify it, be fast, balance eyes, face, arms, speech, and time, as well as what to do next. You're going to call 911, you're going to collect yourself, and you're going to pass on all the pertinent information. Thanks for listening.